towering like buildings crashed onto the ship, shattering it into splinters. Fear gripped Ellen's heart, but she held on stubbornly. She was only 10 years old, but life on this cruel island had taught her to be strong. The storm raged for days. Finally, when the forces of nature exhausted themselves, calm descended. Exhausted and terrified, Ellen managed to reach the shore. She lay on the sand, her body trembling, tears streaming down her face. She was alone. Her mother, who had sung her a lullaby the previous night, was now forever claimed by the sea. Several days passed before Ellen could muster the strength to rise. Hunger gnawed at her insides, thirst parched her lips. She wandered along the shore, searching for food and water. She was fortunate to find a spring of fresh water and a few edible plants she had learned to recognize from living with her father on this island. The island was harsh and unwelcoming. Its rocky shores embraced dense jungles harboring both beauty and danger. Ellen knew that wild animals and ruthless people inhabited these lands. One day, while she was foraging for food, a group of unkempt men stumbled upon her. They were rock prospectors, treasure hunters who had plundered the island for years. They captured Ellen, mistaking her for a savage. Their leader, Wolf, a man with eyes as cold as ice and a scar cutting across his entire cheek, wanted to drive her away. But Old Tom, the weathered old man, the tribe's shaman who lived on the island, intervened. He saw strength of spirit and potential in Ellen. He persuaded Wolf to leave her, teaching her survival skills instead. Thus began a new life for Ellen. She became Old Tom's apprentice. He taught her hunting, fishing, trap setting, as well as the history and secrets of the island. He told her about the legendary stone hidden deep in the jungle, a stone that supposedly bestowed immense power upon its wielder. Years passed. Ellen transformed into a skilled huntress and fierce warrior. Her body toughened, her hair became wild and free like the wind. She trusted no one except Old Tom, for life on the island had taught her to be wary. But deep in her soul, she nurtured hope of finding her father. 7 years had passed since the storm had cast Ellen ashore. She had become a woman, strong and independent, capable of surviving in any conditions. One morning, as Ellen returned from hunting, she spotted a silhouette of a ship on the horizon. It was a remarkable sight, for ships rarely ventured to the island. Ellen's heart quickened. Could it be her father? She rushed to Old Tom to share the news. Old Tom frowned. His wise eyes clouded with concern. "No one can be trusted on this island, Ellen," he said. "Especially those who come from the sea." But curiosity and hope outweighed Ellen's fears. She decided to approach the ship. To her surprise, it was not a military vessel or a pirate frigate, but a small merchant ship. As she drew closer, a young man descended from the ship with gentle eyes and a warm smile. He introduced himself as Jake, a merchant seeking a place to trade with the local population. Ellen was cautious, but Jake impressed her with his politeness and kindness. He told her about the world beyond, about bustling cities full of life and diversity. Ellen told him about the island and her desire to leave it. Jake seemed moved by her story. He offered her a place on his ship. He could take her to the mainland where she could start a new life. Ellen was tempted. She dreamed of a life beyond the island, of searching for her father. But she knew she couldn't fully trust Jake. During their conversation, Ellen noticed a glint of something hidden in Jake's eyes when he looked towards the center of the island. She asked him about it. Jake hesitated slightly. He confessed to hearing legends about a legendary precious stone supposedly hidden on the island. He said he wanted to help Ellen find her father, but he also wanted to search for this stone. Ellen found herself at a crossroads. Should she trust Jake? Was he using her to find treasure? Tension mounted with each passing moment. She needed to make a decision. She either stayed on the island, which had become her prison, or risked sailing with a stranger into the unknown. Ellen stood on the shore, her gaze darting between Jake and the ship rocking on the waves, and the dense jungles that had been her home for the past 7 years. Jake's offer was tempting. She longed to leave behind the island, where every day was a struggle for survival. She also couldn't shake the thought of her father. Perhaps he was out there on the mainland waiting for her. But intuition whispered a warning. Jake seemed like a good person, but his interest in the legendary stone raised suspicions. Could he be a treasure hunter using her to find the treasure? Tell me about your father, Ellen finally broke the silence. Jake looked slightly surprised but quickly composed himself. He said he had heard stories about a captain who had shipwrecked near the island several years ago. He offered to help her find any clues that could lead her to her father if she agreed to sail with him. Ellen closed her eyes, trying to clear her head. She knew she was taking a risk. But life on the island had become monotonous, and the hope of finding her father never faded. She opened her eyes and looked resolutely at Jake. "All right," she said. "I'll sail with you. But if you betray me, you'll regret it." Jake grinned broadly. "I won't regret it," he assured her. "Together we'll find your father and maybe even this legendary stone." The next few days were a whirlwind of activity. Ellen bid farewell to old Tom, who reluctantly gave her his blessing. She gathered her few belongings, a sturdy knife, a hunting bow, and a pouch of dried herbs. Finally, the day of departure arrived. Ellen stepped onto the ship, a swirl of emotions churning inside her. She glanced back at the island, which had become her home and her prison. She didn't know what lay ahead, but she was filled with determination and the spark of hope. The ship sailed away from the shore, cutting through the waves. Ellen watched as the island shrank into the distance, taking with it the secrets of the past. Ahead lay the open ocean, a vast expanse of blue promising adventures, dangers, and perhaps even a reunion with her father. On the ship's deck, Ellen got to know the crew. They were seasoned sailors, weathered by the sun and wind. They looked at the girl who had grown up on a wild island with curiosity. At night, Ellen gazed at the starry sky, millions of tiny diamonds scattered across the black velvet. She dreamed of meeting her father, but she was also troubled by a gnawing suspicion about Jake. His interest in the stone was too great to be innocent. One day, after they had been at sea for several weeks, a dark blot appeared on the horizon. As it drew closer, Ellen saw that it wasn't just a cloud but another ship, a sleek, black vessel with tattered sails. Ellen recognized it immediately. It was Captain Morgan's ship, a ruthless pirate who terrorized the seas. Panic gripped the crew. Captain Morgan's pirates were known for their cruelty. They plundered ships and showed no mercy to those who resisted them. Jake ordered the crew to hoist the sails to full speed to escape the pirates. But Morgan's ship was faster. It quickly caught up to them and cannonballs rained down from its side. Chaos erupted on the ship. Sailors ran across the deck screaming in fear. Ellen grabbed her bow and began shooting poisoned arrows at the pirates attempting to board. During the battle, Ellen noticed that Jake was acting suspiciously. Instead of fighting alongside the crew, he seemed more interested in hiding something below deck. When one of the pirates almost broke through onto the deck, Ellen shot him down with an arrow. The pirate fell, but before losing consciousness, he managed to whisper to her, "Jake, he's with us." Ellen froze. Her world turned upside down. Could Jake be a traitor? Was he planning to betray them to the pirates in exchange for something? Before she could make sense of it, Elin saw Jake emerging from below deck, holding a small, intricately carved chest in his hands. The pirates on the neighboring ship cheered. Elin realized Jake wasn't a merchant, but a treasure hunter. He had been using her to find the island's legendary stone, and now he planned to sell it to the pirates. Anger and disappointment boiled inside Elin. She had become the victim of yet another betrayal. But she wasn't about to give up. She grabbed her knife and lunged at Jake. At that moment, the storm suddenly intensified. Thunder roared, waves crashed against the ship, and the wind tore at the sails. In this cacophony of battle and raging elements, Elin and Jake found themselves alone. The ship creaked and swayed as if dancing under the fierce onslaught of the storm. Waves as tall as houses loomed over it, threatening to engulf it. Thunder deafened with its roar, and lightning tore through the sky, momentarily illuminating Elin and Jake, frozen, weapons at the ready, on the deck. Elin seethed with anger and disappointment. Her heart raced madly. "Traitor," she thundered, her voice barely audible through the howling wind. Jake raised his hands, the chest with the stone still tightly clenched in his grip. "Elin, listen, it's not what it seems," he shouted. But his words were drowned out by the fury of the storm. Elin didn't believe him. Jake's deception wounded her deeper than any storm. She lunged at him, the knife gleaming in her hand, reflecting the lightning's light. Meanwhile, one of the pirate ships, unable to withstand the storm's assault, began to sink. The panicked cries of the pirates mingled with the howling of the wind. Chaos reached its peak on board the ship. Suddenly a wave, as massive as a wall, crashed onto the ship. Elin and Jake were thrown to the deck. At the same moment, the mast, unable to withstand the pressure of the wind, snapped with a crack, collapsing onto the deck. Elin found herself trapped under the debris of the mast. Pain shot through her body, but she tried not to give in. She saw Jake attempting to free her, but falling debris hindered his efforts. "Save yourself," she shouted to him. "Forget about the stone." Jake hesitated. His face, illuminated by lightning, was filled with alarm. But then, with a determined expression, he began to clear a path to her. At that moment, another wave engulfed the ship. Elin closed her eyes, bracing herself for the worst. But to her astonishment, the wave passed her by, carrying away the debris of the mast. When she could finally open her eyes, she saw that the ship was completely wrecked. Jake was nowhere to be found. The storm raged around her, and the ship's wreckage scattered in the turbulent water. Elin was alone amidst the raging ocean. Despair gripped her heart for a moment, but Elin was a daughter of the sea. She had learned to survive where others would perish. Looking around, she noticed a sturdy piece of wood among the ship's wreckage. She grabbed onto it and began to paddle, desperately fighting against the waves. Time seemed to stretch on for an eternity before the storm began to abate. The wind calmed down, the waves subsided, and the sky began to clear. Exhausted and battered, Elin still clung to the wreckage. On the horizon, she spotted a dark blot. With her last ounce of strength, she swam towards it. After some time, her eyes beheld a small, uninhabited island. Gathering the last shreds of her strength, she crawled onto the shore and collapsed onto the sand, losing consciousness. When Elin came to, her body ached with pain, but she was alive. She surveyed the island. It was small, covered in greenery, with a white sandy beach. She realized she was alone again. Was Jake alive? Had he managed to save himself? And where was the legendary stone now? Finding food and water became her top priority. She found a freshwater spring and some edible plants using her knowledge gained from the first island. Days passed. Elin began to settle into her new island life. She built herself a temporary shelter from branches and leaves. Once again, she started hunting and fishing to sustain herself. One day, while exploring the island, she stumbled upon a hidden cave. She entered cautiously, holding a makeshift torch in her hand. On the cave walls, Elin saw ancient drawings. They depicted people worshipping a massive, glowing stone. Elin's heart quickened. Were these depictions of the legendary stone that Jake was searching for? Suddenly she heard a rustling from the depths of the cave. She raised the torch and saw a small figure lurking in the shadows. Elin froze. Was it a wild animal or perhaps another person living on the island? She braced herself for a confrontation, but the figure slowly emerged. It was a girl no older than 10 years old. She was thin and dirty, her clothes made of rags. The girl looked at Elin with fear. Overcoming the language barrier, Elin learned that the girl's name was Lily. She was the only survivor after pirates attacked her village on the mainland. She had been living on this island for several months. Elin was surprised. She wasn't alone. On this island, besides her, there was another person. Together, they began to survive on the island. Elin taught Lily hunting and fishing skills. Lily, in turn, told her stories about the surrounding islands. One night, sitting by the fire, Elin told Lily about her search for her father and the legendary stone. Wide-eyed, Lily said, "I know about the stone. The old shaman from my village said it's hidden deep inside a volcano on an island north of this one." Elin felt a chill. A volcano? It was dangerous, but perhaps that's where the stone was. And perhaps that's where Jake was if he managed to escape from the ship. The desire to find her father and the excitement of the stone fueled a new determination in Elin. She decided to reach the volcanic island. Together with Lily, they began to build a raft from palm leaves. They gathered food, water, and some necessary tools. Finally, the raft was ready. Elin bid farewell to the island, which had become her temporary home. She didn't know what lay ahead, but the sense of adventure and the glimmer of hope warmed her soul. Together with Lily, they set sail towards the dangers and adventures that awaited them on the path to the volcanic island and, perhaps, to unraveling the mystery of the legendary stone. After long and exhausting days of sailing, Elin and Lily finally reached the volcanic island. They were greeted by a majestic and daunting mountain emitting black smoke. Summoning all their courage, they landed on the shore and set off towards the base of the volcano. Their path led through dense jungles teeming with wild animals. They crossed turbulent rivers, circumvented streams of lava, and scaled steep cliffs. Finally, they reached the cave Lily had spoken of. Inside the cave, they found ancient drawings depicting a map of the island. Marked on the map was a cave passage leading to the heart of the volcano. Gathering their last reserves of strength, Elin and Lily entered the passage. They were surrounded by heat and stifling air, and hot lava crackled beneath their feet. Finally, they found themselves in a large cave. In the center of the cave gleamed a magnificent stone, the same one depicted in the drawings. Elin approached the stone and touched it. Suddenly the stone shone brightly, and before her appeared the ghost of her father. Her father told Elin that he had to leave her to protect her from enemies. He gave her a key that would unlock a secret portal leading to a safe place. Elin joyfully embraced her father's ghost, then took the key and activated the portal. Together with Lily, they stepped into the portal and disappeared from the cave. The portal transported them to a picturesque island where peaceful people lived. Elin and Lily found refuge among them and started a new life. Elin would never forget her adventures and the mystery of the legendary stone. She kept the key as a memento of her father and how courage and friendship helped her overcome all hardships. Thank you for being with us today. I hope that this story has brought you emotions. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like it, subscribe to the channel and click on the bell so you don't miss any of our new stories. Thank you for your support. You are the best.